During Friday's question and answer session, following a panel discussion at a 4-day Cannabliss SVG 2025 festival, Chief Executive Officer of St. Lucia's Regulated Substances Authorities, Dylan Inglis, spoke of St. Lucia's progress with the cannabis legal framework. Inglis says that a multifaceted draft legislation is with the Cabinet of Ministers awaiting approval and should be passed before the end of the year.
It is now with the Ministers of Cabinet for review before the passage of the legislation for cannabis. We also have the Drug Prevention of Misuse Cannabis Amnesty Bill, which is with the Cabinet of Ministers for approval for reading in Parliament. These two bills, as soon as they pass, and we hope they'll be passed in short order, will really speak to the framework for the cannabis regime in St. Lucia. The regime, as we have drafted it into the legislation, allows for possession and all of the activities within a commercial cannabis space under license. Cultivation, transportation, manufacturing, retail, wholesale, importation, exportation, etc.
Under the many headings of the framework, special provisions are in place for smaller farmers who may be displaced when larger companies try to monopolize and dominate the market.
The intention is that when that bill is passed, any individual who is cultivating or supplying cannabis can come forward and say, I am involved in the cannabis industry. Verification will be done, and an amnesty will be given so that your involvement in the industry will not subject you to any litigious process. You will not be arrested and charged, albeit we recognize that you were involved in the industry. From there, you will be deemed a legacy cannabis operator. All the LCOs have special treatment under the cannabis legislation. So the license fees, for example, for a cultivation license or a dispensary license are very different for an LCO than they would be for someone else.
These are but a few examples of the protections that local cultivators will benefit from.
There is also preferential treatment given under a mechanism that we refer to as our central trading entity. So unlike the other islands, having come in later and trying to ensure that the lion's share of the cannabis funds would have gone to St. Lucians, we have something called a central trading entity where every cannabis plant which is propagated in St. Lucia either is sold to that entity or royalties have to be paid to that entity for having cultivated in St. Lucia. Legacy operators have a right to be able to purchase into that entity. So the thinking is that if you are an individual who is currently a juggler and you do not have the financial wherewithal to set up a brick and mortar to establish a dispensary meeting the standards of what we recognize is required for the cannabis industry.
Inglis notes that officers are currently undergoing training to support the development of the cannabis industry, with legislation being crafted to suit the specific needs of the island.
We have now started to benefit from training from our officers held in Barbados recently. We hope to have some training take place in St. Vincent within the next few weeks, just to ensure that we have the resources and capabilities in place to administer a regime for cannabis. We've also looked to benefit from some of the lessons learned from our sister islands. So we've looked to see what has happened in Jamaica. We've looked to see what has happened in St. Vincent, what has worked and what hasn't worked. We've looked to Barbados. We recognize that as a sovereign nation, we have our own special way of dealing with things, but there's always benefit to understanding what didn't work somewhere, why it didn't work, can that work with us, should we tweak this? And it's been an iterative process over the last 3 to 4 years to verify with the stakeholders, what do you think would be best suited for St. Lucia?
Cannabliss SVG 2025 represents a significant milestone in St. Vincent and the Grenadines' journey toward becoming a regional leader in medical cannabis by merging scientific discourse with cultural celebration. The event not only underscores the nation's progressive regulatory approach, but also positions SVG as a destination for cannabis innovation, investment, and heritage. For Choice News Now, I am Chelsea Austinay.